picture this. It is late, the lights are low, and somewhere in the back of your mind there is a question you cannot quite name. Not a practical question, not "what should I do tomorrow?" or "how do I fix this?" Something older, deeper, quieter. The question sounds like this: is there something beyond all of this? Beyond the noise, beyond the visible, beyond even thought itself? That question, that ache for something you cannot see or prove or touch, is not new. 2,000 years ago, a philosopher in Alexandria felt it too. His name was Plotinus. And he spent his life building an answer. Not a simple answer, not a comfortable one, but an answer so vast, so luminous, that it quietly reshaped the foundations of Western religion. He never called himself a Christian. He predated most of Christian theology. Yet his ideas, the invisible architecture he built, became the hidden scaffolding beneath it. Augustine read him. Medieval mystics breathed him. Renaissance thinkers resurrected him. And tonight, in the dark, we are going to trace that architecture together, slowly, gently, without pressure, because the philosophy Plotinus built is not just ancient history. It is a map of the inner life, a description of what happens when the mind reaches past the edges of itself. And perhaps, just perhaps, it speaks to the same quiet restlessness you carry at this hour. You do not need to be a philosopher to understand this. You just need to have felt, at least once, that the world you see is not all there is. Let that thought sit for a moment, because we are about to follow it all the way up. Chapter 2, Alexandria and Formation. Plotinus was born in 204 CE, probably in Egypt. The records are thin. We do not know his family. We do not know if he was rich or poor, loved or lonely as a child. What we know is this: at 28, he walked into a philosophy school in Alexandria, and everything changed. Alexandria, the great city of learning, a place where Greek thought, Egyptian mysticism, and Eastern philosophy collided in the streets and lecture halls. It was there that Plotinus met a teacher named Ammonius Saccas. Ammonius left no writings, no books, no lectures preserved for history. But something in his teaching lit a fire in Plotinus, a question Plotinus would spend the next 40 years trying to answer. The question was not, "What is true?" or "How should we live?" It was simpler and more impossible. What is the source of everything? Not the source in time, not the first cause in a chain of events, but the origin of being itself, the ground beneath existence, the silent center from which all things flow. Imagine sitting in that lecture hall, 28 years old, listening to a teacher describe something you have felt but never named. The sense that reality is layered, that the visible world, the bodies, the objects, the passing thoughts, is only the surface. And beneath it, or beyond it, or inside it, something else is humming. Plotinus stayed with Ammonius for 11 years. He spoke of those years later with reverence, not because he learned facts, but because he learned how to see. And here is the part most people overlook. Plotinus did not study philosophy the way we study it now, as a mental exercise, a collection of arguments, a game played with logic. For him, philosophy was a practice, a discipline, a way of reorienting the soul. It was not enough to think correctly. You had to become capable of seeing what thought alone could not reach. Let your shoulders drop. This is not a race. This is a slow climb. And we have time. Chapter 3, Plato, reinterpreted. After 11 years in Alexandria, Plotinus joined a military campaign to Persia. He wanted to meet the philosophers of the East, to hear what they knew. The campaign failed. The emperor was killed. Plotinus barely escaped with his life. He made his way to Rome. He was 40 years old, and in Rome he began to teach, not in a grand academy, not with fanfare or fame, just a small school, a circle of students who gathered to hear him speak. What he taught was Plato, but not the Plato you learn in a classroom. Plato had written dialogues, beautiful, intricate arguments about justice, truth, the soul, the forms. But Plato had also hinted at something else, something he never fully explained. In his later works, Plato spoke of the good, a principle beyond being, beyond knowledge, beyond even the forms themselves. Most readers skipped over it. It felt too abstract, too far removed from the practical questions of life. But Plotinus saw it. He saw that Plato had pointed toward something immense, something that could not be captured in language but could only be approached asymptotically through contemplation. And Plotinus decided to follow that hint all the way to its conclusion. He asked, what if the good is not just an idea? What if it is the source, the origin, the silent, invisible center from which everything, thought, soul, matter, time itself, flows? And here is where the architecture begins. Plotinus did not invent Plato, he excavated him. He took the fragments and built something monumental. A system, a vision, a description of reality that moved in 3 great steps, descending from the unknowable into the knowable. He called the first step the One, the second step Nous, divine intellect, the third step soul, and from soul the visible world unfolds. This is the ladder, the hidden ladder beneath Western religion. And tonight we are going to climb it together. Slowly. Notice the weight of your body where it rests. Let the next breath come a little slower. We are not in a hurry. Chapter 4. The birth of Neoplatonism. The word Neoplatonism was not invented by Plotinus. It was coined centuries later by scholars who needed a name for what he had done. Because what Plotinus built was not just commentary on Plato, it was something new, a synthesis, a vision, a complete metaphysical architecture that explained everything from the origin of being to the restlessness you feel at 3 a.m. And it all begins with a single, impossible claim. There is something before being, not in time, not in space, not in any way you can picture. But logically, conceptually, metaphysically, there must be something that is the source of all being, all existence, all multiplicity. And that something cannot itself be multiple. It cannot be divided. It cannot even be called a thing. Because if it were a thing, it would be one thing among others. It would be part of the system, not the source of it. So Plotinus calls it the One, not because it is the number one, but because it is utterly simple, utterly unified, without parts, without division, without distinction. It is not good in the way we call things good. It is beyond goodness. It is not powerful in the way we call things powerful. It is beyond power. It does not think. It does not will. It does not desire. It simply is, or rather, it is beyond is. And here is the difficulty. The moment you try to describe the One, you betray it. Because description requires language. Language requires concepts. Concepts require multiplicity. And the One is before all of that. So how do you talk about it? Plotinus spent 40 years trying, and the answer he arrived at was this: you do not describe the One, you point toward it, you circle it, you say what it is not, and in the silence that follows, something shifts. You do not understand it, but you sense it, like standing at the edge of an ocean at night. You cannot see the water, but you feel the vastness. Hold that image gently, because we will return to it. Chapter 5, The One Beyond Being. Let us try something. Think of the most basic fact you know. Not a complex idea. Something simple. I exist. This room is here. The world continues. Now ask, why? Why does anything exist at all rather than nothing? Most philosophy stops at causes. If you ask why the room is here, someone might say, because it was built. And if you ask why it was built, they might say, because someone designed it, and so on. But that is not the question Plotinus is asking. He is asking about the existence itself, the isness, the fact that there is being rather than non-being. And his answer is, being itself must come from something. That something cannot be another being, because then you are just pushing the question back one step. It must be beyond being, prior to being, the source of the possibility of existence. That is the One, not a God in the religious sense, not a person, not a consciousness deciding to create, just the silent, infinite ground from which all existence flows. And here is what makes this strange. The One is not separate from you. It is not out there in some distant heaven, watching and judging and intervening. It is the source of you, the origin of your being, the ground beneath your awareness, which means, and this is the part that will echo through Christian mysticism for the next 2,000 years, the path to the One is not outward, it is inward, not toward thoughts, not toward feelings, not even toward the soul as you experience it day to day, but toward the silent center, the place before thought, the ground of being itself. Plotinus believed you could reach it, not through argument, not through belief, but through a kind of seeing, a contemplation so deep, so total, that the self dissolves and only the One remains. He called it henosis, union, and he claimed quietly, humbly, that he had experienced it 4 times in his life. 4 moments where the boundaries fell away, where there was no Plotinus and no One, just unity. What does that feel like? He could not say, because language requires separation, subject and object, knower and known. But he tried anyway, and the trying became the foundation of Western mysticism. Let your jaw soften. Feel the stillness around you. We are moving slowly, on purpose. Chapter 6, Ineffability and Simplicity. There is a reason Plotinus kept writing about something he claimed could not be described. Because the mind does not like silence. It wants answers, categories, names. And when you tell the mind there is something beyond names, the mind immediately tries to name it anyway. So Plotinus wrote, not to capture the One, but to protect it from being reduced. He wrote in negatives, the One is not material, not temporal, not spatial, not conscious in the way we are conscious. It does not think because thinking requires multiplicity, a thinker and a thought. It does not desire because desire implies lack. It is not good in the moral sense because morality requires choice and choice requires alternatives. It is utterly simple, and simplicity in Plotinus's vocabulary does not mean easy to understand. It means without parts, without complexity, without division. A thing is complex if it can be broken down into components. The One cannot. There is nothing beneath it, nothing more fundamental. It is the end of the line, the place where all questions stop. And here is the paradox that haunted medieval theologians. If the One is beyond being, beyond thought, beyond goodness, how can you say anything true about it? And Plotinus's answer was, you cannot. Not in the way you say true things about the world. You can only gesture, you can only say what it is not, and hope that in the clearing left behind something is sensed. This approach, called apophatic theology or negative theology, became one of the pillars of Christian mysticism. Pseudo-Dionysius, Meister Eckhart, the cloud of unknowing. All of them inherited Plotinus's insight. The highest truth cannot be spoken. It can only be approached in silence. But here is the strange comfort in that. It means you do not have to understand everything. You do not have to master the system, solve the puzzle, get the answer right. The one is not a riddle, it is a presence. And the only way to meet it is to stop asking and simply be. One slow breath. Let that settle. Chapter 7. Emanation explained. So, if the one is utterly simple, utterly beyond, utterly silent, how does anything else exist? How do we get from the one to the world of trees, thoughts, bodies, time? This is the question Plotinus had to answer. And his answer is one of the most elegant ideas in the history of philosophy. He called it emanation. Imagine a spring. Clear, cold water bubbling up from the ground. The spring does not decide to flow. It does not will the water into existence. It simply overflows. Naturally. Necessarily. That is how the one gives rise to everything else. Not through intention, not through creation in the way we imagine a craftsman making a table, but through overflow, through abundance. The one is so full, so complete, that it cannot help but give rise to being. And the first thing that emanates from the one is Nous, divine intellect. Nous is still vast, still divine, still beyond anything we experience in ordinary life. But unlike the one, Nous is multiple. It contains the forms, the eternal patterns of all things. In Nous, there is already a kind of duality. A thinker and what is thought, a knower and what is known. It is the first step down from absolute unity. And from Nous, soul emanates. Soul is the mediator, the bridge between the eternal world of forms and the temporal world of matter. Soul looks upward toward Nous and contemplates the forms. But it also looks downward, and in looking downward, it gives shape to matter. It does not create matter out of nothing. Matter, for Plotinus, is the final residue, the last fading echo of the one's overflow. But soul gives it order, structure, life. And here is what makes this architecture so powerful. It is not a story of fall and redemption, not yet. It is a description of how reality is structured, how the invisible becomes visible, how the eternal becomes temporal. And crucially, this is not a one-time event. Emanation is not something that happened long ago and then stopped. It is happening now, always, continuously. The one is still overflowing. Nous is still thinking the forms. Soul is still giving life to matter. You are not separate from this process. You are inside it. Your existence, your awareness, your restlessness at this hour, all of it is part of the great cascade from unity to multiplicity. And the path of philosophy for Plotinus is learning to reverse the flow, to ascend step by step from matter to soul, from soul to nous, from nous to the One. And that ascent does not require belief. It requires practice. Notice where your attention is, not to control it, just to notice. We are still climbing, slowly. Chapter 8, Nous, Divine Intellect. Nous is the first thing that comes from the One, and it is already almost incomprehensible. Think of it like this. The One is pure unity, no distinctions, no multiplicity, no thought. But the moment anything comes from the One, there is already a kind of separation. There is the source, and there is what flows from the source. And that separation, that first distinction, is Nous. Nous is divine intellect, not intellect in the way we use the word, not reasoning, not problem-solving, but the eternal act of knowing. In Nous, all the forms exist, not as separate things, but as one unified act of thinking. Plato had spoken of the forms, the eternal, unchanging patterns that give shape to the world. The form of beauty, the form of justice, the form of humanity. For Plato, these were abstract ideals, perfect templates that earthly things imitate imperfectly. But Plotinus took it further. He said, the forms are not just ideas floating in some abstract realm. They are thoughts. The thoughts of Nous, the content of divine intellect. And in Nous, thinking and being are the same thing. When Nous thinks the form of beauty, beauty exists. When Nous thinks the form of tree, the eternal tree is. There is no gap between thought and reality at this level, which means Nous is not separate from what it knows. It knows itself, it thinks itself, and in thinking itself, it is. This is why Plotinus calls it the first God, not in a religious sense, but in the sense that it is the first thing that can be called divine, eternal, complete. And here is the part that will matter for Christian theology. Nous is the place where all knowledge lives, all truth, all beauty, all the eternal patterns. When Augustine reads Plotinus, he will see this and think, this is the mind of God. When medieval mystics contemplate the forms, they will see the thoughts of the Creator. But for Plotinus, Nous is not a person. It is not deciding, planning, loving, judging. It is simply the eternal act of knowing, always, already, without beginning or end. And you, the small flickering you reading this now, carry a trace of it. Because your ability to think, to know, to recognize patterns, that is the echo of Nous in you, faint, partial, obscured by matter and time and distraction, but still there. And the path upward is learning to turn your mind from the changing world to the eternal, to contemplate not just ideas, but the source of ideas, to think not just thoughts, but to become aware of thinking itself. This is not meditation in the modern sense. It is philosophy as spiritual practice, and it requires patience. Let the next breath be slightly slower. Nothing to solve, just listening. Chapter 9. The World of Forms. The forms are not easy to grasp. Plato introduced them, Plotinus inherited them, and for 2,000 years, philosophers have argued about what they are and whether they exist. But for Plotinus, they were not theoretical. They were the furniture of eternity. Imagine you see a tree, a specific tree, oak maybe, leaves rustling, bark rough under your hand. That tree is particular, temporal. It grew from a seed. It will die. But the form of tree, the eternal pattern, the essence of what makes a tree, does not change. It does not exist in space. It does not exist in time. It exists in Nous, as a thought, as an eternal act of knowing. And every particular tree in the world is an imperfect reflection of that form. This is not just true for trees. It is true for everything. Beauty, justice, humanity, courage, circle, triangle, every concept, every category, every pattern you recognize, there is a form of it in Nous. And here is where it gets strange. The forms are not separate from each other. In the physical world, one tree is here, another tree is there. They are distinct. But in Nous, all the forms interpenetrate. They are one unified whole. The form of beauty contains the form of good. The form of truth contains the form of justice. It is a totality, a seamless web of eternal knowing. And when Nous thinks the forms, it is not like us thinking a thought and then moving on. It is an eternal, timeless act, always happening, never beginning, never ending. For Plotinus, this is the answer to one of the deepest questions in philosophy. Why is there order in the world? Why do trees grow in patterns? Why do circles behave predictably? Why does justice feel like something real, not just a human invention? Because the world of matter is shaped by soul, and soul looks upward to Nous, and Nous contains the forms. The visible world is an image, a reflection, an echo of the eternal. Imperfect, fleeting, but not random. And this means, and here is the part most people miss, that when you recognize beauty, you are not inventing it, you are remembering it. Your soul, which originates in the eternal, recognizes the form of beauty reflected in the particular beautiful thing. A sunset, a face, a piece of music. You do not create the beauty. You see it, you remember it, and in that moment of recognition, you are, however briefly, in contact with the eternal. This is why philosophy, for Plotinus, is not just intellectual. It is a homecoming, a return to what the soul has always known but forgotten. Feel the weight of your body. Let your mind rest. We are halfway through the climb. Chapter 10. Soul as Mediator. Soul is the hinge. It stands between two worlds. Above it, Nous, eternal, timeless, perfect. Below it, the material world, temporal, changing, imperfect. And soul looks both ways. When soul turns toward Nous, it contemplates the forms. It knows eternal truth. It rests in unity. But when soul turns toward matter, it descends. It gives life. It animates bodies. It enters time. This is not a mistake. This is not a fall in the Christian sense. For Plotinus, soul's descent is natural, necessary, part of the great architecture. Without soul, matter would be inert, shapeless, lifeless. Soul is what gives the world its order, its beauty, its intelligibility. Think of it like this. Nous is the blueprint, the eternal plan. Soul is the architect bringing the blueprint into manifestation. But here is the tension. Soul does not fully leave the eternal. Part of it remains in Nous, always contemplating, always turned upward. But another part descends into time, into bodies, into the world of multiplicity and change. And this creates a split. The higher soul, the part that never left, is still in contact with the divine. The lower soul, the part that animates your body, that feels hunger and fear and desire, is caught up in the world. And you, right now, at this hour, are the meeting point of those two. The part of you that longs for something beyond is the higher soul, remembering its origin. The part of you that worries, plans, reacts, survives, that is the lower soul, doing what it must in a material world. Neither is wrong, but one is closer to home. And the spiritual life, for Plotinus, is learning to shift your center of gravity, not by rejecting the body, not by hating matter, but by remembering that you are not only this, you are also always connected to Nous, to soul, to the one, even now, even here, even in the dark. That connection has not been severed. It has only been obscured. And the practice is simple. Turn your attention from the changing to the unchanging, from the scattered to the unified, from the noise to the silence. This is not escapism. This is remembering what you are. Let your shoulders drop. Just for a moment, we are not finished, but we can rest here. Chapter 11, Individual and World Soul. Plotinus distinguished between two kinds of soul. The world soul, the great soul that animates the cosmos, gives order to the stars, governs the cycles of nature. And the individual soul, your soul, my soul, the soul of every living being. But here is the surprising part. They are not separate. The individual soul is not a fragment broken off from the world soul. It is the world soul experienced from a particular perspective. Imagine a single light shining through many windows. Each window shows a different angle, a different color, but the light is the same. That is how Plotinus thought of souls. There is one soul, one life, one awareness. But it manifests in countless bodies, countless perspectives, countless lives. And each perspective, each individual soul, believes itself to be separate. You look out through your eyes and think, this is me. That is the world. But for Plotinus, that sense of separation is an illusion, not in the sense that you do not exist, but in the sense that your existence is not isolated. You are a wave believing itself separate from the ocean, but the ocean is still there, beneath, around, within. And here is what that means practically. When you feel alone, truly, deeply alone, you are not. The isolation is real as an experience, but it is not real as a metaphysical fact. You are always, already connected to the world soul, to every other living being, to the cosmos itself. Separation is a function of embodiment, of perspective, of the way matter divides. But beneath the division, there is unity. And the more you turn inward, not toward the surface thoughts and feelings, but toward the silent center, the more you sense it. The boundary between self and world softens, not because you lose yourself, but because you find the larger self, the soul that was never born and will never die, the soul that looks out through every pair of eyes. This is not mystical nonsense. This is Plotinus's rigorous philosophical argument for why you are never as alone as you feel. And it is one of the reasons his ideas resonated so deeply with early Christian thinkers, because it offers something philosophy alone rarely offers: comfort, not false comfort, not wishful thinking, but the comfort of recognizing that the loneliness you feel at night is not the whole truth. There is something beneath it, something older, something that connects you to everything. Notice the stillness in the room. You are part of that stillness. Chapter 12, Descent into Matter. So, why does soul descend at all? If unity is perfect, if Nous is eternal, if the One is complete, why does anything enter the world of matter, time, suffering? This is the question that haunted Augustine, that shaped Christian theology, that echoes in every religion that speaks of a fall. For Plotinus, the answer is not sin, not disobedience, not punishment. It is necessity. Soul descends because it must. Not because it is forced, but because it is the nature of soul to give life, to look downward, to shape matter, to bring order to what would otherwise be chaos. Soul is the mediator, and mediation requires both directions. It must contemplate Nous, but it must also animate the world. Without soul's descent, there would be no life, no bodies, no cosmos, just the eternal stillness of Nous and the silent simplicity of the One. And while that might sound appealing in certain moods, it is not the fullness of being. The fullness requires manifestation, expression, the eternal becoming visible in time. But here is the risk. When soul enters matter, it forgets. It becomes so absorbed in the particular, this body, this life, these desires, that it loses sight of its origin. It identifies with the lower, with the temporal, with the changing. And that identification is what causes suffering. Not the body itself, not matter itself, but the illusion that you are only the body, only the particular, only this. For Plotinus, the spiritual task is not to escape the body. It is to remember what you are while you are in the body, to live as both, to honor the particular without forgetting the eternal. This is not easy, because the world pulls, it demands, it distracts. And the higher soul, the part that remembers, speaks quietly. It does not shout, it does not force, it waits. And philosophy, for Plotinus, is learning to listen, to turn your attention from the loud to the quiet, from the urgent to the essential, from the surface to the depths. This is why you are listening to this now. Not to learn facts, but to practice a kind of attention, the kind that reaches past the noise and finds the silence that was always there. One slow breath. Let the body rest. Chapter 13, Matter and Privation. Matter, for Plotinus, is the final frontier. It is the last step in the emanation from the One, and it is almost nothing. Not nothing in the sense of non-existence, but nothing in the sense of absence. Matter is what remains when all form, all order, all intelligibility is removed. It is pure potentiality, pure receptivity, the blank screen on which soul projects shape and life. Plotinus calls it privation, not evil. Not bad in a moral sense, but lacking, empty, without being of its own. Matter does not exist independently. It is only real insofar as it receives form from soul. A block of wood is not just matter. It is matter shaped by the form of tree, given life by soul. Your body is not just matter, it is matter organized by the form of humanity, animated by your soul. Without form, matter is nothing. And this is why Plotinus says matter is the lowest rung on the ladder, not because it is evil, but because it is the furthest from the One, the most distant, the most diluted, the most obscured. But here is the paradox. Matter is also necessary. Without it, the eternal could not become visible. The forms would remain abstract. Soul would have nothing to animate. The cosmos would not exist. So matter is both the problem and the possibility. It is what obscures the divine, but it is also what allows the divine to be expressed. And the spiritual life, for Plotinus, is learning to see through matter to the form within it. To look at a tree and see not just wood, but the eternal pattern made visible. To look at a person and see not just flesh, but a soul struggling to remember its origin. To look at yourself and see not just this tired body, these scattered thoughts, but the deeper reality beneath. This is not denial. This is not pretending matter does not exist. It is seeing matter for what it is, the canvas, not the painting. And when you learn to see that way, something shifts. The world does not lose its beauty. It gains it because you start to see the divine everywhere, not in some distant heaven, but here, now, in the particular, in the way light moves through leaves, in the way a stranger's face holds grief and hope at once, in the way your own breath continues, steady and quiet, even when you forget to notice it. Feel that breath now, the air moving in and out. That is matter. And it is also divine. Chapter 14, The Problem of Evil. If everything flows from the One, if the One is perfect, if the cosmos is ordered by Nous and animated by soul, then where does evil come from? This is the question every theodicy, every attempt to explain why a good God allows suffering, must answer. And for Plotinus, the answer is subtle. Evil is not a thing. It is not a force, not a being, not a substance. It is privation, absence, the lack of good. Think of it like darkness. Darkness is not a thing in itself. It is the absence of light. Turn on a lamp, and darkness disappears. Not because you destroyed it, but because you filled the space with what was missing. Evil, for Plotinus, is like that. It is what happens when soul turns too far from Nous, when it becomes so absorbed in matter that it forgets its origin. The forgetting creates disorder, confusion, suffering, not because the One willed it, not because matter is evil, but because the absence of alignment with the good creates a kind of vacuum, and in that vacuum, suffering arises. This is not a satisfying answer for most people, because it does not explain why a child suffers, why injustice persists, why the innocent are harmed. Plotinus knows this, and he does not pretend to have a complete answer. What he offers instead is a framework. Evil is not ultimate. It is not equal to the good. It is derivative, secondary, a shadow cast by the absence of light, and the path to overcoming it is not through fighting evil directly, but through turning back toward the good, through remembering, through reorientation, through the slow, patient work of aligning the soul with Nous. This will not comfort everyone, and it should not, because philosophy is not therapy. It is not designed to make you feel better. It is designed to help you see clearly. And what Plotinus saw is this: the world is not a battlefield between good and evil. It is a cascade from unity to multiplicity. And in that cascade, disorder is possible. But the one remains, Nous remains, soul remains, and the path back is always open. Not because you deserve it, not because you earned it, but because you never truly left, you only forgot. Let your jaw soften. There is nothing to fix right now. Chapter 15, Beauty and the Good. Beauty, for Plotinus, is not decoration. It is not subjective, not a matter of taste. It is a revelation. When you see something beautiful, truly beautiful, what you are seeing is the form shining through matter. A sunset, a piece of music, a mathematical proof, a face. The particular thing is beautiful because it participates in the form of beauty. And the form of beauty is not separate from the good. For Plotinus, beauty and the good are two sides of the same reality. The good is what draws the soul upward. Beauty is what makes the good visible. And this is why beauty matters. Not because it makes life pleasant, though it does, but because it is a ladder, a way of ascending from the material to the eternal. When you recognize beauty in the world, you are recognizing the trace of Nous. The eternal made manifest. The invisible made visible. And if you follow that recognition, if you ask not just what is beautiful, but why is it beautiful, you begin the ascent. You move from the particular beautiful thing to the form of beauty, from the form of beauty to the good itself, and from the good to the one. This is the path Plotinus calls the way of love. Not romantic love, not desire in the ordinary sense, but eros, the longing of the soul for its origin. The ache you feel when beauty pierces you, that is your soul remembering. Remembering that it came from something higher, something more beautiful than any particular thing. And the longing is not a flaw, it is a compass. It points you home. This is why Plotinus says, do not dismiss beauty as trivial. Do not reduce it to pleasure or preference. Beauty is a teacher, a guide, a messenger from the eternal. And when you let it move you, really move you, without irony or defense, you are already halfway to the One. Because beauty is the One's signature in the world. The way the formless becomes form. The way the infinite touches the finite and invites you to remember. Notice something beautiful right now, even here, even in the dark, the way the silence feels, the way your breath continues. Beauty is not always loud. Sometimes it is just the quiet fact of being. Chapter 16. Love as ascent. Love, for Plotinus, is not a feeling. It is a movement, a motion of the soul toward what it lacks. But what the soul lacks is not another person, not wealth, not power, not comfort. What it lacks is unity. The soul, divided between the eternal and the temporal, feels incomplete. And that incompleteness drives it to seek, to reach, to ascend. In the early stages, the soul seeks unity in the wrong places. It reaches for beauty in bodies, in objects, in achievements, and there is nothing wrong with that. It is natural. The body is beautiful. The world is beautiful. But the beauty in particular things is limited, temporary, partial. It satisfies for a moment. Then the longing returns. And if you are wise, if you are paying attention, you start to notice the pattern. No particular thing ever fully satisfies. The job you wanted does not bring the peace you imagined. The relationship you longed for does not complete you. The success you achieved does not silence the restlessness. And this is not because you chose poorly. It is because what you are seeking is not a particular thing. It is the universal, the eternal, the one, and the soul in its confusion keeps seeking the infinite in the finite. Plotinus calls this the ladder of love. You start by loving particular bodies. Then you recognize that what you love is not just this body, but the beauty in this body. Then you realize beauty itself is what you love, not the particular instance, but the form. Then you see that the form of beauty is one expression of the good, and the good is one expression of the one, and at the top of the ladder, love becomes something else entirely. Not desire, not longing, not lack, but union. The soul, remembering its origin, lets go of the particular and rests in the universal. This is not cold. It is not abstract. It is the warmest, most complete experience a human being can have. But it cannot be forced. You climb the ladder by degrees, by practice, by patient reorientation. And the path is not linear. You will descend, you will forget, you will reach for the particular again. But each time, the ascent becomes a little clearer. The longing becomes a little wiser, and eventually the soul learns where home is. Not in the world, but in the silence beyond it. Let the next breath be slower. You are not far from that silence now. Chapter 17. Contemplation and Ecstasy. Contemplation, for Plotinus, is not thinking about something. It is resting in it, not analyzing, not dissecting, not even understanding in the usual sense. Just being present to what is eternal. This requires a shift. In everyday life, the mind is active, restless, moving from thought to thought, problem to problem, worry to worry. But contemplation is different. It is stillness. Not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness of fullness. When the soul contemplates now, it does not think about the forms. It sees them, participates in them, becomes them, in a sense. The boundary between knower and known dissolves. There is just knowing, just being, just presence. And in that presence, the soul tastes something it cannot describe. Plotinus calls it ecstasy, not in the sense of wild emotion, but in the literal sense. Ecstasis, standing outside the self, outside the body, outside time. He describes it carefully, almost reluctantly, because language fails here. The experience is simple, immediate, whole, but the moment you try to talk about it, you split it into parts, subject and object, before and after, and the wholeness is lost. Still, he tries. He says, in the moment of union, there is no I contemplating the one. There is just the one. The soul does not disappear, but it becomes transparent, permeable, and what shines through is the source itself. He experienced this 4 times in his life, 4 moments where everything fell away, where the restlessness stopped, where there was no question left to ask. And afterward he returned to the body, to time, to language, but he was changed, not in a visible way, not in his actions or his words, but in his certainty. He knew, not as belief, but as fact, that the soul is eternal, that unity is real, that the one is not a concept, but a presence. And he spent the rest of his life trying to help others climb toward that experience, not by convincing them, but by clearing the path, by showing them what to let go of, what to turn toward, what to practice, because contemplation is not a gift. It is a skill, and like any skill, it requires patience, repetition, failure, return. You do not arrive at union by force. You arrive by surrender, by letting go of the need to understand, to control, to be separate, and trusting that what remains is enough. Feel the weight of your body where it rests. Let your mind be quiet for just a moment. That quietness is not empty. It is full of what you have been seeking. Chapter 18, The Mystic Union. Union with the One, Henosis, is the goal. Not the goal in the sense of a destination you reach and then stay, but the goal in the sense of what the soul is made for, like a river flowing back to the ocean. The river does not stop being a river when it reaches the sea, but it remembers what it was before it became separate. For Plotinus, henosis is rare. Most people never experience it, not because they are unworthy, but because they never turn their attention in the right direction. They spend their lives looking outward, seeking satisfaction in the world. And the world gives much: beauty, connection, meaning, but it does not give unity. Unity is found only by turning inward, past the thoughts, past the feelings, past even the soul as you know it, to the silent center, the ground of being, the place where you and the One are not two. And here is what makes this strange. In the moment of union, you do not feel ecstatic in the ordinary sense. You do not feel anything at all, because feeling requires a subject who feels and an object that is felt. In henosis, there is no subject, no object, no division, just being, pure, simple, whole. And when you return, and you always return, you cannot quite remember what it was. Not because you forgot, but because memory requires time, and the experience was outside time. What remains is not a memory, but a certainty. You know, in a way that cannot be shaken, that separation is not ultimate, that beneath the noise, beneath the multiplicity, beneath the restless self, there is unity. And that unity is not indifferent, not cold, not distant. It is the source of everything, including you. This is the mystical core of Neoplatonism, and it is the reason Augustine, reading Plotinus, wept. Because what Plotinus described in careful philosophical language was what Augustine had been seeking through prayer: the experience of God, not as a person in the sky, but as the ground of being, the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Plotinus gave Augustine the language, the framework, the map, and that map became the hidden architecture of Christian mysticism for the next 1,000 years. Not every Christian mystic knew they were following Plotinus, but they were. When Pseudo-Dionysius spoke of the divine darkness, when Meister Eckhart spoke of the Godhead beyond God, when Teresa of Avila described the interior castle, they were walking the path Plotinus had carved, a path not of belief, but of experience, not of doctrine, but of direct encounter. And that path is still open, not only for mystics, not only for saints, but for anyone willing to turn their attention from the world to the silence and wait. Let your shoulders drop. The waiting is not empty. Chapter 19. Virtue and Purification. So how does one prepare for contemplation? How does the soul, entangled in matter, caught up in desire and distraction, begin the ascent? Plotinus's answer is practical. You practice virtue, not virtue in the sense of following rules, not morality as obedience, but virtue as purification, as clearing away what blocks the soul's natural vision. Think of it like this. The soul is like a mirror. When it is clean, it reflects Nous perfectly. But when it is clouded by desire, by fear, by attachment, by identification with the body, the reflection is distorted. Virtue is the practice of cleaning the mirror, and there are stages. The first stage is civic virtue, the virtues of ordinary life: courage, temperance, justice, wisdom. These are necessary. They create order in the soul. They allow you to live without constant inner conflict. But they are not enough, because civic virtue still operates in the world. It is about right action, right relationship, right balance in the temporal realm. The second stage is purification. This is where you begin to detach, not from life, but from identification with the transient. You practice seeing the body as a tool, not as your identity. You practice seeing desires as movements of the lower soul, not as commands. You practice stillness, simplicity, letting go, and as you do, something clears. The noise quiets, the restlessness softens, and beneath it you begin to sense the higher soul, the part that never descended, the part that is still, even now, in contact with Nous. The third stage is contemplative virtue. This is where the soul turns fully inward, where it no longer needs the world to remind it of the eternal. It rests in Nous. It participates in the forms. It knows itself as part of the divine. And from there, if grace and practice align, henosis becomes possible. But here is the important part. You do not skip stages. You do not leap from distraction to union. You walk slowly, step by step, and every step matters. Every moment you choose stillness over noise. Every moment you choose the eternal over the urgent. Every moment you remember that you are not only this. Each of those moments is purification. And purification is not punishment. It is not denying yourself. It is clearing space so that what is already there, the eternal, the divine, the one, can be seen. Notice where your mind is right now, not to judge it, just to notice. That noticing is the first step. Chapter 20, Interior Self-Knowledge. The famous command inscribed at Delphi, know thyself. For most people, this means understanding your preferences, your patterns, your history. But for Plotinus, it means something deeper. It means recognizing what you are beneath the surface self, beneath the roles, beneath the thoughts, beneath even the emotions and memories. To know yourself, in Plotinus' sense, is to know that you are not the body. The body changes, it ages, it will die. But you, the soul, do not change in the same way. You are not the thoughts. Thoughts come and go, they rise and fall like waves. But you, the awareness in which thoughts appear, remain. You are not even the personality, the habits, the preferences. These are formations, patterns created by the soul's interaction with matter, but they are not the essence. The essence is deeper. It is the part of you that looks through your eyes, but is not your eyes. The part that knows, but is not the known. The part that has been the same since you were 5 years old, even though everything else has changed. That is the soul. And to know yourself is to identify with that, not with the transient. This is not easy, because the transient is loud. It is immediate. It demands attention. The body says, I am hungry, I am tired, I am afraid. And those signals are real. They matter. But they are not you. You are the one who hears them. And when you learn to rest in that hearing, to be the witness, not the content, something shifts. The inner world becomes quieter, not because the thoughts stop, but because you stop believing them. You see them as movements in the soul, like weather passing through the sky. And the sky, the awareness itself, remains clear. This is interior self-knowledge, not knowing about yourself, but knowing yourself as awareness, as presence, as the silent center that has never been disturbed, and from that center the path to Nous is clear, because Nous is not far away. It is not in another realm. It is what you are when you stop being this. One slow breath. Feel the stillness that remains when the breath stops. That stillness has always been there. Chapter 21. Time and Eternity. Time, for Plotinus, is the moving image of eternity. Eternity is not endless time. It is the absence of time. In Nous, everything is present, all at once, not in sequence. The forms do not unfold. They simply are. But soul, in descending toward matter, creates sequence, before and after, past and future. And that sequence is time. Time is what happens when the eternal is viewed from the perspective of the particular. It is the way the unchanging appears to change when seen through a changing lens. And here is the paradox. You live in time. You age. You plan. You remember. You anticipate. But you also carry eternity within you. The higher soul, the part that never descended, does not experience time. It rests in the eternal present. And occasionally you sense this in moments of deep absorption, in flow, in presence. When you are fully engaged in something, music, conversation, creation, time disappears. Not because it stops, but because you stop experiencing it. You step into the eternal present, the now that does not pass. And afterward, when you return to clock time, you feel disoriented. Where did the time go? It did not go anywhere. You were just not in it. For Plotinus, this is not an accident. It is a glimpse of your true nature. The eternal is not somewhere else. It is right here. But you cannot reach it by thinking about the future or dwelling on the past. You reach it by being fully present, by letting go of before and after, by resting in the now. And the now, the eternal now, is always available, not as a state you achieve, but as what remains when you stop chasing. This is why Plotinus says, if you want to know the One, stop seeking it in time. The One is not in the future, not in some distant enlightenment. It is here, now, always. But the mind, caught up in time, cannot see it. The mind plans, worries, remembers, regrets, and all of that is time. To see the eternal, you must step out of time, not by leaving the world, but by being so present that the world becomes transparent and you see the eternity shining through. Notice this moment, not the moment that just passed, not the one coming, this one, the one you are in right now. That is eternity. Chapter 22, Freedom and Determinism. If everything flows from the One, if the cosmos is ordered by Nous, if soul governs according to eternal patterns, are you free? Or is everything determined? This is one of the oldest questions in philosophy, and Plotinus's answer is subtle. At the level of the body, you are not free. Your body is matter. It is governed by physical laws. It responds to causes. If you are cold, you shiver. If you are hungry, you feel compelled to eat. The body does not choose. It reacts. At the level of the lower soul, the part entangled in desires, fears, habits, you are also not fully free. Your reactions are shaped by past experiences, by patterns laid down in childhood, by the conditioning of culture and environment. You think you are choosing, but often you are just responding. Like a ball rolling downhill, the path is determined by the slope. But at the level of the higher soul, the part that contemplates Nous, freedom emerges. Not freedom as randomness, not freedom as doing whatever you want, but freedom as self-determination. When the soul turns toward Nous, it aligns with the eternal, and in that alignment, it acts not from compulsion, but from understanding. It sees the good, and it chooses the good, not because it must, but because it is the soul's nature. This is the freedom Plotinus describes, not the freedom to do anything, but the freedom to be what you truly are. And what you truly are is not the bundle of desires and fears and habits. You are the soul that contemplates the eternal. And when you act from that place, you are free, because you are no longer acting from lack, from need, from the pull of the external. You are acting from fullness, from alignment with the One. And here is the strange comfort in this. It means you do not have to resist every impulse, fight every desire, control every thought. You just have to turn your attention from the lower to the higher, from the transient to the eternal. And as you do, the impulses lose their grip, not because you suppress them, but because you stopped identifying with them. You saw them for what they are, movements in the lower soul, waves on the surface, and you rested in the depths, where the water is still, and freedom is not a struggle. It is a return. Let your jaw soften. There is nothing to control right now. Chapter 23, Providence and Order. Providence, for Plotinus, is not God intervening in history. It is not a personal deity watching over you, deciding whether to answer your prayers. It is the order inherent in the cosmos. The way Nous thinks the forms. The way soul gives life to matter. The way everything unfolds according to pattern. There is a reason the seasons change, the stars move, bodies grow and decay, not because someone is pulling strings, but because the cosmos is ordered by intelligence, by the eternal patterns of Nous. And that order is providence. It does not mean everything happens for a reason in the sense of a personal plan. It means everything happens according to reason, according to structure. The cosmos is not random. It is not chaotic, even when it feels chaotic to you, because you see only the part, the moment, the particular. But providence is the whole, the pattern, the eternal unfolding. And here is what that means for how you live. You do not have to make everything happen. You do not have to force, control, manage every detail. The cosmos has an order, a rhythm, a pattern that is larger than you. And your task is not to impose your will on it, but to align with it, to see where the current is flowing, and to move with it. This is not passivity. It is wisdom. It is knowing when to act and when to wait, when to push and when to release, and trusting that the order is there even when you cannot see it. Even when it feels like everything is falling apart, the forms remain, Nous remains, the One remains, and the pattern, though obscured by time and matter, is still unfolding. You are part of that pattern, not a mistake, not an accident, not a problem to be solved, but a necessary expression of the whole. And the more you trust that, the more you relax into it, the more clearly you see the way forward, the next step, the quiet alignment with what is. This is providence, not certainty, not guarantee, but trust. Trust that you are held by something larger than yourself. And that something is not indifferent. It is the source of all order, all beauty, all goodness, and it includes you. Feel the ground beneath you, solid, real. You are held. Chapter 24, Cosmology and Hierarchy. The cosmos, for Plotinus, is not flat. It is layered, hierarchical, descending from the highest to the lowest. At the top, the One, utterly simple, utterly beyond. Below it, Nous, divine intellect, the realm of forms. Below that, soul, the mediator between eternal and temporal. And below that, the material world, bodies, matter, time. This is not a hierarchy of value in the moral sense. It is a hierarchy of proximity to the source. The closer something is to the One, the more unified, more real, more eternal it is. The further from the One, the more divided, more transient, more dependent. But nothing is separate. The One gives rise to Nous. Nous gives rise to soul. Soul gives rise to matter. It is a continuous flow, an unbroken chain. And you, sitting here, breathing, aware, are part of that chain. You are not only the body, not only matter. You are soul, and soul is rooted in Nous, and Nous flows from the One, which means the One is not far from you. It is the ground of your being, the source of your awareness, the silence beneath your thoughts, and the spiritual life is learning to see the hierarchy clearly, to recognize that the body is real but not ultimate, that thoughts are real but not the deepest truth, that even the soul in its individuality is not the final word. The final word is the One, and everything else is an expression, an image, a reflection of that. When you understand this, really understand it, the world changes. Not in appearance, but in meaning. You see the divine everywhere, because everything participates in the One. Every tree, every face, every breath, not equally, but really. And that recognition is the beginning of love. Not love for this or that, but love for being itself, for the fact that there is something rather than nothing, for the miracle of existence, however flawed, however painful, however transient, because existence is the overflow of the One, and to exist is to be held, even now, in that overflow. Let your shoulders drop. You are part of something vast, and it is holding you. Chapter 25. The Return of the Soul. The ascent is not only philosophical, it is existential. The soul, having descended into matter, having forgotten its origin, having identified with the body and the world, must return, not physically, but in awareness. It must remember what it is, where it came from, where it is going. And the return is not instantaneous. It is gradual, step by step, practice by practice. First, you notice the restlessness, the sense that something is missing, that satisfaction in the world is always partial, always temporary. Then you begin to ask, what is it I am really seeking? And philosophy enters, or religion, or art, or some experience that cracks open the surface, and you glimpse for the first time that there is something beyond. That is the beginning. From there, you practice. You turn your attention from the external to the internal, from the body to the soul, from the soul to Nous, from Nous to the One, not all at once, but in moments, in flashes. And each time you turn, you remember a little more. The illusion of separation weakens. The identification with the transient loosens. And the eternal becomes not just an idea, but a presence, a reality you can rest in. This is the return, and it is not leaving the world. It is seeing the world differently, from the perspective of the eternal, as a play of forms, a dance of soul, a beautiful temporary expression of the One. And when you see it that way, you no longer cling. You no longer demand that the world give you what only the One can give. You enjoy the world. You participate in it. You love it. But you do not worship it, because you know it is not ultimate. And that knowing is freedom. Not freedom from the world, but freedom in the world. The ability to live fully, love deeply, engage completely without losing yourself, because you know where home is, and you can return to it again and again whenever you need to. One slow breath. You are already on the path. Chapter 26. Death and Immortality. Death, for Plotinus, is not the end. It is a transition. The body dies, it dissolves, it returns to matter, but the soul does not die, because the soul is not material. It is not composed of parts that can break down. It is a living whole, a self-moving principle, a trace of the eternal. And the eternal does not die. But what happens after death? Plotinus is careful here. He does not claim certainty. He does not describe heaven or hell in detail. What he offers is a framework. If the soul in life turned toward Nous, if it purified itself, practiced virtue, contemplated the eternal, then after death it rises. It ascends toward the higher realms, toward unity, toward the One. But if the soul remained entangled in matter, if it identified with the body, clung to desires, never turned inward, then, after death, it remains bound to the lower. It may reincarnate, it may wander, it may remain confused, seeking in the material what can only be found in the eternal. This is not punishment, it is consequence. The soul's destination after death is determined by what the soul became in life, and what the soul becomes is a matter of attention. What you focus on, you become. If you focus on the transient, you become transient. If you focus on the eternal, you become eternal. Not in the sense of living forever, but in the sense of aligning with what is timeless. And that alignment does not begin after death. It begins now. Every moment you turn your attention from the noise to the silence. Every moment you rest in presence rather than chasing. Every moment you remember that you are not only this. Each of those moments is preparation, not for some future judgment, but for the natural unfolding of what you are. And here is the comfort Plotinus offers. Death is not an ending you must fear. It is a doorway, a transition, a return. And if you have practiced the return in life, if you have climbed the ladder even a few steps, then death will not be terror. It will be the final letting go, the release of the body, the shedding of the particular, and the soul, light and clear, will rise, not because it deserves to, but because it is its nature. Feel the breath moving in and out. That breath will stop one day, but what breathes the soul continues. And it is practicing, even now, the art of letting go. Chapter 27, Influence on Augustine. In 386 CE, a young man named Augustine sat in a garden in Milan. He was brilliant, tormented, searching. He had tried everything: rhetoric, Manichaeism, skepticism. Nothing satisfied. And then a friend handed him the books of the Platonists: Plotinus, Porphyry, the Neoplatonists. Augustine read and wept, because what he found in those pages was not cold philosophy. It was a description of what he had been seeking through prayer: the ascent of the soul, the divine light, the one beyond being. And Plotinus gave Augustine the language, the framework, the map, and Augustine took that map and baptized it. He said, "The One is God. Nous is the Word, the Logos, the Son. Soul is the Holy Spirit animating creation. And the ascent Plotinus described is the Christian path of purification, illumination, union. It fit almost perfectly. Not perfectly. Augustine had to adjust, to translate, to reframe. Plotinus did not speak of sin. Augustine did. Plotinus did not speak of grace in the Christian sense. Augustine did. But the architecture, the hidden architecture of reality, was the same. And from Augustine, Neoplatonism flowed into Christianity, into the church fathers, into the monastics, into the mystics. Pseudo-Dionysius, Boethius, John Scotus Eriugena, they all drank from the same well, the well Plotinus dug. And for 1,000 years, Western Christianity was shaped quietly by a pagan philosopher from Alexandria. Most Christians did not know this. They thought they were following Scripture, following tradition, and they were. But the structure beneath, the metaphysics, the cosmology, the spiritual psychology, was Plotinus. The One became God. Nous became the divine mind. Soul became the image of God in humanity, and the ascent became salvation. Same ladder, different language. This is why Plotinus matters. Not because he was right about everything, not because his system is perfect, but because he built something so vast, so elegant, so luminous, that it could hold 2,000 years of spiritual seeking. And it still holds, even now, even for you. Let your mind rest. You are standing in a tradition older than you know. Chapter 28, Shaping Christian Theology. The influence did not stop with Augustine. It spread through the centuries, through the minds of theologians who never read Plotinus directly, but inherited his framework. Thomas Aquinas, Meister Eckhart, John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, all of them in different ways worked within the Neoplatonic architecture. The idea that God is beyond being, ineffable, unknowable, through reason alone. The idea that the soul ascends by degrees, through purification, through contemplation, through union. The idea that matter is not evil, but distant from the source. And the spiritual life is learning to see the divine shining through it. These are not originally Christian ideas. They are Plotinian ideas, translated, baptized, made Christian. And this is not a betrayal. It is a synthesis. Christianity needed a metaphysics, a structure, a way of explaining how the infinite God relates to the finite world. And Plotinus, through Augustine, provided it. The Trinity, Father, Son, Spirit, echoes the one Nous, soul. The Incarnation, God becoming flesh, mirrors the descent of soul into matter. The resurrection, the body transformed, glorified, mirrors the return of soul to the eternal. Same patterns, same architecture. And for 2 millennia, Christians have prayed, meditated, and contemplated within that structure. Most do not know the name Plotinus, but they know the path he mapped, the interior journey, the ascent of the soul, the union with the divine. And that path is not only Christian, it is human. It is the universal structure of spiritual awakening, found in Sufism, in Kabbalah, in Vedanta, in Zen. Different languages, different symbols, different practices, but the same movement, from multiplicity to unity, from the surface to the depths, from the transient to the eternal. Plotinus did not invent this movement, but he described it with such clarity, such precision, that it became the template, the hidden template beneath Western religion. And tonight, you are touching it, not believing it, not converting to it, just seeing it. The architecture that has shaped 2,000 years of seeking, and feeling perhaps that it speaks to something in you, something older than belief, older than religion, the simple, quiet longing for home. Notice that longing now. It is not a flaw, it is a compass. Chapter 29. Medieval transmission. After the fall of Rome, Plotinus nearly disappeared. The West fragmented. Libraries burned, texts were lost, but a few manuscripts survived, hidden in monasteries, copied by monks who barely understood them. And through those fragile threads, Neoplatonism survived. It was not called Neoplatonism, it was just the philosophy, the ancient wisdom, and it mixed with Christian theology in ways that were sometimes uneasy, because Plotinus's one was not the personal God of Scripture. His Nous was not exactly the Trinity. His soul was not the Holy Spirit. The fit was close, but not perfect, and so medieval thinkers had to translate, to adapt, to reconcile. Boethius did it. In his Consolation of Philosophy, written in prison, awaiting execution, he spoke of the wheel of fortune, the hierarchy of being, the soul's ascent toward the divine. Pure Plotinus, dressed in Christian language. Pseudo-Dionysius did it, in his mystical theology written in the 5th or 6th century. He described the divine darkness, the apophatic path, the ascent beyond knowledge. Again, Plotinus, filtered through Christian mysticism. And John Scotus Eriugena did it, in the 9th century, translating Pseudo-Dionysius into Latin. He spoke of the procession and return, the descent from God into creation and the return of creation to God. Same ladder, same architecture. By the 12th century, Neoplatonism was everywhere in Christian thought, not as a separate philosophy, but as the unspoken structure beneath theology, the way people thought about God, about the soul, about salvation. And then, in the 13th century, Aristotle returned to the West through Arabic translations, through scholars like Aquinas. And Aristotelianism challenged Neoplatonism. a different structure, a different emphasis. Reason over contemplation, substance over emanation, form and matter over the one and nous. But Neoplatonism did not disappear. It went underground, into the mystics, into the contemplatives, into the seekers who found Aristotle too cold, too rational, too focused on this world. They wanted the ascent, the union, the experience of the divine, and for that they returned to Plotinus. Even if they did not know his name, let the next breath be slower. The wisdom is older than the names. Chapter 30, Renaissance Revival. In the 15th century, something shifted. A scholar named Marsilio Ficino in Florence obtained a manuscript, the complete works of Plotinus, the Enneads. In Greek, no one in the West had read the full text in centuries, and Ficino translated it into Latin with commentary. And suddenly, Plotinus was everywhere again. The Renaissance thinkers devoured him. Pico della Mirandola, Giordano Bruno, Michelangelo. They saw in Plotinus a vision of the cosmos that was vast, luminous, and deeply human. A cosmos where the material and the spiritual were not opposed but connected, where beauty was a ladder to the divine, where the human soul was not a wretched sinner but a spark of the eternal, capable of ascending to the one. This was intoxicating. It shaped Renaissance art. The way Michelangelo painted the divine in human form. It shaped Renaissance philosophy. The way Pico spoke of the dignity of man. It even shaped Renaissance magic. The way Bruno spoke of the infinite universe, alive with divine presence. Plotinus was the secret fire beneath it all. And then the Reformation came, and the Counter-Reformation, and the Church clamped down on mysticism, on speculation, on anything that smelled too pagan. Bruno was burned at the stake. Ficino's translations were scrutinized, and Neoplatonism once again went underground. But it did not die. It lived on in secret societies, in the romantics, in the poets. Wordsworth, Coleridge, Emerson, Whitman, all of them drank from the same well, the well of the one. The idea that nature is alive with divinity, that the soul is infinite, that the universe is one. Same Plotinus, new language, and even today, in the 21st century, when most people have never heard the name Plotinus, his ideas are everywhere, in mindfulness, in non-duality, in the perennial philosophy. The idea that all spiritual paths point to the same truth, that the self is an illusion, that unity is real, that the material world is a veil. Plotinus said it first, in the 3rd century, and we are still saying it, because the architecture is sound, not perfect, not complete, but sound. It holds the weight of 2 millennia of seeking, and it still holds you. Even if you did not know it until tonight, feel that weight, the weight of centuries, the weight of seekers, all climbing the same ladder, and you are one of them. Chapter 31, Legacy of the One. So what is the legacy? What did Plotinus leave behind? Not a religion, not a church, not a movement, but an architecture, a way of seeing reality that makes room for both reason and mystery, for both the material and the spiritual, for both the particular and the universal. He showed that you do not have to choose between the world and the divine, because the world is the divine, seen from a distance, and the divine is the world, seen from its source. He showed that philosophy is not just argument, not just logic, not just debate. It is practice, discipline, a way of reorienting the soul. He showed that the one is not a concept, not an idea, not a theory. It is a presence, ineffable, immediate, available, not in some distant heaven, but here, now, in the silence beneath your thoughts. And he showed that the path to the one is not belief. It is attention, turning from the many to the one, from the surface to the depths, from the noise to the silence. And that path is still open for anyone, for you, not because you deserve it, not because you earned it, but because the one is the source of your being, and the source is always already here. You do not have to travel to it. You just have to stop running from it. This is the legacy, not a system to master, not a doctrine to believe, but a path to walk, a ladder to climb. And the first step is simple. Notice the restlessness, notice the longing, notice the quiet beneath the noise. That noticing is the beginning, and the beginning is enough. Let your jaw soften, let your shoulders drop. You are already on the path, and the one is already here, waiting, not for you to understand, not for you to achieve, but for you to notice that it was never far, that it is closer than your breath, that it is the ground beneath your awareness, the silence beneath your thoughts, the stillness beneath your restlessness. And tonight, as you rest, as you let go, as you drift towards sleep, you are already touching it. The one that is beyond names, beyond thoughts, beyond even you. And yet, somehow, you, not the you that worries, not the you that plans, but the you that simply is, and always has been, and always will be. Rest now. The ladder will be here tomorrow. But for tonight you have climbed enough, and the silence is holding you, as it always has.